Watch this.
They're told that they must join a political party just to exercise their right to vote. We believe that's wrong.
So, a group of Idahoans proposed an initiative to change how Idaho will do elections. But Idaho's Attorney General has legal concerns, so much so that he has filed a brand new lawsuit on the open primary initiative. He will tell you why. And that initiative is also generating discussion in terms of impacts and costs to the Gem State if voters do want to change how we do elections. We head down the hallway from the AG's office to the Secretary of State, who details the complicated context. Meanwhile, fueling the firefighters, we take you to the generous community involvement keeping wildfire first responders energized, prepared, and cared for as they continue intense work on the Durkee fire. In November, Idahoans will have the chance to say yes or no to changing how our state does elections. The Open Primaries Initiative qualified for the ballot, and it looks to accomplish two distinct things. The initiative proposes a nonpartisan primary election where the top 4 vote getters, regardless of their political party, would advance to the general. The general election would then have instant runoff voting, often referred to as ranked choice voting, and voters would choose their top candidate and rank the remaining candidates in order of preference. If no candidate wins with more than 50% of the vote after the first choice rankings are counted, then the last place candidate would be eliminated, and each vote for that candidate would go to the voter's second choice, and then that process would go on until one candidate gets at least 50% of the vote, then they are declared the winner. And although the initiative got the stamp of approval from the Secretary of State to be on the November ballot, Idaho's Attorney General is saying, not so fast. There's a new legal challenge from the AG, Attorney General Raul Labrador, and he's looking to remove the initiative off the ballot altogether. It's not the first legal battle between the AG and Idahoans for open primaries, the group behind the initiative. Last summer, in fact, Labrador was sued by the group over the ballot title that he gave the initiative. It's a job that he and the Secretary of State have to do. But in the end, long story short, the Supreme Court asked Labrador to change it from what it originally was. But now we are back to the courts about a year later with a fresh lawsuit filed from Idaho's AG. Aspen Shumpert heard the concerns from AG Labrador himself and got reaction from Idahoans for Open Primaries.
Idaho's current primary voting allows political parties to close their primary, something the Republican Party has chosen to do. A system that the Idahoans for Open Primaries Coalition says is leaving a large group of people out.
There are 270,000 independent voters. When they show up to vote in the most important primary elections, they're told that they must join a political party just to exercise their right to vote. We believe that's wrong.
The Idahoans for Open Primaries Coalition is working to change that.
We want to give every voter the right to participate in every taxpayer-funded election, and we also want to give voters better choices when they show up to vote.
Luke Mayville with the coalition says the initiative would open up the primary election for voters, and the top 4 candidates, regardless of what party, would move on to the general election, where voters then would use a ranked choice voting to decide the race winner.
The law says
But Attorney General Raul Labrador has 2 problems with the initiative, and he's now suing the Secretary of State's office to take the initiative off the ballot.
In my opinion, they deceived the public by calling it an open primary when the Supreme Court said it wasn't an open primary, but they also deceived the public when they didn't talk about the 2 parts of the initiative.
In the lawsuit, Labrador alleges volunteers who explained the initiative while they were collecting signatures provided a lack of information about the initiative.
The claim that, volunteers who were collecting signatures somehow deceived the public, it's a baseless claim, and it's frankly insulting to the thousands of ordinary Idahoans who spent hours of their time talking to their neighbors, talking to their friends about this initiative. People worked hard to collect these signatures, and they discussed every aspect of this initiative very carefully.
The Idahoans for Open Primaries Coalition feels the Attorney General's lawsuit is a political stunt, and the Attorney General is interfering with the election.
we do not believe this lawsuit is going to be taken seriously by the court.
And why do you feel that way?
Because at the heart of it, there is nothing unconstitutional about giving all voters the right to participate.
I think it's my duty and my responsibility as the Attorney General of the state of Idaho to ensure that the laws are followed in the state of Idaho, and that's what I'm doing with this lawsuit.
I also asked Mayville what it would cost to implement new systems and equipment for this new way of voting. He says it can be implemented at a low cost. He also says the Idaho Division of Financial Management concluded upgrading the equipment would cost as little as $600,000 for the entire state. Joe, I know that you are going to get into more and tell us more about that as well.
Yes, let's do that right now, Aspen. That's part one. How about part two, this potential cost of overhauling Idaho's election? So you heard what Aspen just said, but this is a major topic of conversation because, well, there's a letter that's out there. That's right. Secretary of State Phil McGrain, he wrote to Idaho lawmakers earlier this month about some important considerations and potential implications that the initiative could have on Idaho's budgets and elections. And the timing of the letter, it's not random. It's linked to Idahoans for open primaries qualifying for the ballot. Secretary McGrain wanted lawmakers, a crucial part of Idaho's budgeting process, to fully understand the scope of the impacts in case it does pass. And he wants them to know it now rather than way down the line. Lawmakers need to be prepared to roll with the will of the people, and being informed well ahead of the end results, it'll help that whole thing. Again, if it passes. I spoke with Secretary McGrain about the implications involved here, and I want to be very clear. McGrain is not endorsing or opposing the idea. His job is to oversee elections, and the initiative would change almost everything in how he has to do that. He also has a dual role because, as Secretary of State, he oversees the initiative process, a responsibility to protect the people's right to petition. A special letter from Idaho's top election official highlights the impacts of the proposed initiative from Idahoans for open primaries.
As the chief election official for the state, I felt it was important to get some of this just basic information out as to what does this mean for the state of Idaho.
Idaho Secretary of State Phil McGrain is the recipient of questions from across the board on this topic.
What does this mean related to elections? And so I was very mindful in writing this letter to just put out as best I can factual information and to make sure that we did our due diligence in researching what does this mean with the election equipment we currently use? What does this mean with our relationship with the counties?
McGrain says the open primary portion of the pitch could save money in the sense that ballots would be more uniform, doing away with ballots for each party. Point two of the initiative, instant runoff voting, also known as ranked choice voting, is a different story.
Unfortunately, the current equipment vendors that our state uses aren't built to do a ranked choice voting tabulation. And that's one of the biggest challenges that really comes with that. Between that and then the logistics of coordination between the 44 counties, those are the two things that really stood out to me.
Options exist to make it happen, but there are factors beyond just cost.
That software has not been certified by the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. We've always relied as a state on having that U.S. certification prior to even entertaining any vendor being used in Idaho. Currently, the two vendors we have aren't able to do ranked choice voting, but also aren't pursuing it either.
So what is the estimated cost? Well, it's a tough figure to calculate.
We've estimated that it could cost as much as $25 to $40 million. That is an educated estimate based on what we have spent on election equipment in the past. Without really doing a competitive bid, there's no way to know for sure what this would cost our state. I have talked to other states that have recently replaced their equipment, but again, there's nuances between all the states, and it just doesn't feel like a good comparison, just depending on how other states run their elections versus how we do it here in Idaho.
The price tag debate is also rooted in the fiscal impact statement prepared for the initiative. By Idaho law, there's only a small window for the state of Idaho to get that info prepared before it goes out to the public. And more info has come up since that point.
They were trying to get up to speed, and unfortunately, we weren't able to get some of the information that we have today.
It's a major proposal for Idahoans to think about. This can be done.
Yes.
But whether you philosophically agree with it or not, it's going to take major steps and major equipment and major just training and everything.
Yeah, and I do think in the initiative, if you look at the what the petitioners provided for their funding statement, they highlight the two things that we also highlighted. It was cost in terms of equipment to be able to do it, and voter education. Those are the two biggest areas that we see there could be a cost. Now I think it's a decision for voters on, is this cost worth it? I mean, we spend a lot of money on a lot of different things, and it's a value judgment on, is this change worth whatever it's going to cost to get there?
And there are also practical challenges that the Secretary of State's office pointed out. For example, coordinating results for races that go over county lines. Idaho's pitch is modeled off of Alaska, a place that McGrain has found firsthand runs elections much differently in Idaho. For just one example, the state of Idaho, as you may know, they run elections through the county. Well, Alaska doesn't do that. They actually have 5 state divisions. So it can be very hard to compare Idaho and Alaska. That's the challenge. The proposed initiative is modeled off of Alaska, so we'll keep that in mind. But McGrain also tells me that he has already spoken to lawmakers about creating a mechanism to update a fiscal impact statement on an initiative. And just another fun fact, going back to the lawsuit that Aspen mentioned, Secretary McGrain is technically on both sides of it because he maintains the initiatives, he maintains the elections. He is really in this one, so we will keep you posted. Okay, well, if you had it on the bingo card, you can mark this one off as finally happening. A lawsuit, the first one for the harmful materials in libraries law. Brand new lawsuit today. It's not challenging a book. This one is challenging the law. House Bill 710, as you recall, went into law on July 1st, and that law gives parents the option to file a complaint with the library about a book in the kids section that they find inappropriate. The library has 60 days to move it, and if they don't, people can sue the library for $250 and some other damages. So just today, a group of private schools and libraries, they filed a lawsuit challenging the new law, saying that the Children's School and Library Protection Act limits private schools and privately funded public libraries to give minors materials with non-obscene content because of the law's vague definition of harmful to minors. They also say that the law violates the Constitution because it goes against the right to provide and access information. There are multiple parties including in the lawsuit, including Sun Valley Community School, Foothill School of Arts and Sciences in Boise, Collister United Methodist Church, and some others. As always, we'll keep an eye on this lawsuit and let you know how it plays out. The turkey fire isn't slowing down, and neither is one catering company who is stepping up by stopping regular operations to start packing lunches. We haven't had a ton of time for your comments over the past few days, so now is your time to get the word in. Questions, comments, concerns, really anything, text us at the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. Please be sure to include your name and hashtag the 208. That way we know who it's for and who to give credit to. We'll get to as many as we can live at the end of the show. Okay, we continue to monitor wildfires across our area. There's a lot to keep track of right now, like the grass fire off of Highway 55 north of Eagle by Avamore. That one started last night after a car caught on fire. Good news, Eagle Fire says that one is out. 24 hours later, though, some bad news. Highway 55 is closed again this afternoon for a different fire that started earlier in the day. But Eagle Fire says that both lanes of the highway are closed 2 miles north of Avamore for a fire that's burned about 2 acres. They say that the fire is contained and they should have full containment about 8 o'clock tonight. Highway 55, the good news, should open again soon. We'll keep you posted. Meanwhile, the Bench Lake fire burning south of Stanley is currently 45% contained, but has burned about 2,500 acres. Rain overnight helped slow the fire a little, but Redfish Lodge is still closed because of the fire. You may remember it was evacuated last week. Not so good news for fires in eastern Oregon today. The Durkee fire has grown to almost 269,000 acres. That one is now 20% contained, and that's compared to 0 yesterday. Malheur County evacuations have been lifted, but Baker County is still on deferring levels of evacuation. You can find that at ktvb.com. And while the fire burns our neighboring state, firefighters are burning their energy. So one catering company is doing what they do best, fueling with food for the firefighters on the front line.
Getting our assembly line.
Boxing and unboxing.
We're doing 1,000+ sack lunches every day here. Where are we at, my good sir?
Knack-A-Tack is really
Every single piece.
attacking
Oranges, cheese sticks.
the catering business.
It's all about that flow, huh? Yep.
But this time, it's not for a wedding or business
I want
event.
them to be as uniform as possible. You know, it's much more last minute, and you have the elements to deal with.
General Manager Max Norman says their team's firing up meals for crews fighting the Durkee fire,
Maybe 2.5 days worth of snacks for us here.
both in Boise
Yep.
and in the heat of the action in eastern Oregon.
For breakfast and dinner, Cisco is delivering us the product, and we keep it out there refrigerated, and they get to cook on site there. And then we're delivering them the full truck of lunches and driving back an empty one every day.
3 meals a day,
Oh boy.
totaling 6,000 calories. Because Norman says crews burn through their energy fighting the fires. It's one of the reasons the sack lunches take so long,
That was about 100, right?
with roughly 15 different items going into each bag. But for him and his team, working overtime is worth it.
Idaho and the surrounding states are so beautiful. You know, those guys are working their hardest to take care of the land that all of us love so much. These guys are doing everything they can to keep us safe, so we do what we can to support that too.
And they have no plans of slowing down until the fire finally slows down.
Yeah, as long as they need, we're here to support them.
Knack-A-Tack anticipates being out there for a few weeks. They are also running their food truck. They're stopping that rather while they help assist.
Okay, so 1,000 firefighters, hopefully 3 meals a day. So they're serving about 3,000 meals a day, 2,100 meals a week. That is a lot of food.
Yeah, you know, the thing I think that was a little bit funny, but also just showing the seriousness of this, they said to the service providers that came in, hey, we'll see you tomorrow, when usually that's something that you see, hey, we'll see you next week. So, yeah.
That's a huge undertaking too, and as you would imagine, that means their food trucks and stuff, they aren't off on the streets right now making money.
Right.
They're out helping the community.
Yeah, just racking it in back and forth to Oregon.
Wow. Okay,
Crazy.
It takes a village. Hunter Funk reporting. We will be right back after a quick break.
And that's what it looked like earlier today, just about an hour ago over in Twin Falls. We've got thunderstorms ramping up right now across south central Idaho. So if you or someone you know is going to be in this area or is in this area, they're going to want to know this information. Lots of thunderstorms across the area, and then we've got about 100 strikes of lightning just within the past 3 hours or so. So things looking very active right now. The one storm in particular that we just saw a look at moved off to the east of Twin Falls and produced a downpour, even though likely at the airport we only recorded 0.12 inches, likely more in people's backyards, not the official site. Small hail and lightning also spotted with that. We've got more activity as storms move through Mountain Home. Now those are gaining strength as they get a little closer to Fairfield, so we may see some of that activity ramping up in the Bellevue-Haley area, so just a heads up on that. And we also have a particularly strong storm that's moving closer to Twin Falls right now, looking to stay a little bit more towards that southerly track, not as easterly as some of these other ones are going, but closer to 7 o'clock. So that looks to be moving towards Twin Falls, but there are other ones in between. You can just see how active everything is. We have more activity that we'll be expecting. You can see those storms firing up as they go over the Owyhee Mountains. Max wind gust so far across the area has been in Twin Falls at 45 miles an hour. We expect this potential to continue tonight, so stay with us and we'll keep you posted.
We are one day away from the Paris Olympic opening ceremonies in France, and although some of the summer games have already kicked off with preliminary competitions, soccer, rugby, handball, just to name a few, all week we're bringing Paris to you, including preschool kids at the Suntree Language Academy in Boise. They taught me a little bit of French so I could follow the Olympics a little bit better. Here's another look at their attempt to teach me French.
You know those like breads? They get like you wouldn't hit people with them, but they're big. You know those big breads? What are those called?
Baguettes.
What's better, croissants or baguette?
Croissant.
Yeah, I agree. Have you seen the movie Ratatouille?
No.
No? I'll circle back to that.
So now I know my French breads. Anyway, you can watch the full video on the KTVB Instagram page. The kids were great. They taught me a lot. And guess what? I'm not the only Paris in Idaho. There is actually a Paris, Idaho. So of course, I went to go check it out. And you can watch what we found in the historic Idaho town tonight on the news at 10. And then tomorrow, the Olympics are jumping into Boise. Join us at Jump in downtown Boise, starting at 5 for French food, games, and an Olympic breakdancing performance. The opening ceremony starts at 6:30. They'll have it on the big screen down there. If you can't make it down, no worries. You can watch it all live from 5 to 5:30 right here on News Channel 7. Summer Olympic Games run from July 26th through August 11th. You can watch everything that you can on Peacock and especially right here on News Channel 7. Comments, questions coming up after this. All right, we're going to get to some of your comments here. I just also want to mention today would have been the 100th birthday of Idaho Senator Frank Church, and there's actually a brand new museum exhibit that'll open coming up this weekend down at the museum, the Idaho Historical Museum by Julia Davis Park. So be sure to go check that out. We'll take a look at some of these comments here. Hi, KTVB. Who is paying for the meals provided to the firefighters? Does Kanakatak need donations? Great question, Siri and Meridian. They actually are being paid, so they are being taken care of by the government. So no need to donate. Kanakatak is being compensated for their hard work. This person has some questions about the nomination process. It got a little bit cut off. We'll go to the next one real quickly if I can. Yes, the vendor gets paid typically. Good questions. We'll get to more next time.